What is going on, college basketball fans? Welcome back to another video. Today we have our updated March Madness bracket predictions. We're getting closer and closer to March Madness, and we are going to come out with these a lot more often. And today we're doing a little bit different. Usually we take Joe Lunardi's Bracketology from ESPN. He's usually the most valid bracketology that's been coming out, since forever. And we fill that one out from the first round to the national championship. But today we're going to take a look at CBS Sports and their bracketology, just to switch it up a little bit, see if we can get some different matchups, some different seeds, and see what we think would happen if this were to be the bracket today, and if the tournament did start today. So this is an updated bracket by Jerry Palm, bracketology expert there at CBS, updated on January 27th. So we are going to take his bracketology, we put it into our own PDF here, and we'll fill it out to the championship. So we'll see what we are thinking right now as far as championship contenders, Cinderella runs, sleeper teams to make it further than we think, teams that we think might get upset, all that good stuff. And we come out with a lot of these videos and a bunch of other college basketball content here on the channel as well. So make sure you guys subscribe if you guys have not already. But yeah, guys, without further ado, let's get it started. And our top overall seed is still the Auburn Tigers, and they'll be going up against Toothpaste University Colgate. And Colgate usually is a force out of the Patriot League, and they're always usually a threat to possibly pull off an upset. They've been to the tournament the last few years, or at least 3 of the last 4 years or so. But they've usually been a 15 seed, a 14 seed. They're a 16 seed for a reason, and that is because they would be the last team in the 68 teams, because the Patriot League is just not that strong this year. It's really anybody's league to come out of there, and Colgate's just been here before, so I see why he chose Colgate to come out. But no chance Auburn gets upset by Colgate. Colgate they might be 500, but I'm not even sure. They might be a below 500 team on the win-loss so far this year. The Patriot League is just not very strong. Next up, we have our 8-9 matchup between Texas Tech and Gonzaga. Very strong 8-9 matchup, especially for the region with the number 1 overall seed in it. Yes, Gonzaga has not looked good, but we know that they do have a lot of potential, especially with that front court. And Texas Tech is a very good sleeper out of the Big 12 Conference. I think they're going to end up with a higher seed than an 8 seed, but probably a 7 or a 6. I don't think that they get higher than a 5 for sure. But they've been turning up lately, and I am going to pick Texas Tech in this matchup. They've been the better team as of late. Gonzaga just hasn't looked good. If I were to see these two teams matched up today, I would pick Texas Tech. They're the hotter team right now. They've been playing really good. They're playing the best basketball of the season for them so far. I'm going to go with the Red Raiders. Next up, we do have Memphis versus VCU in our 5-12 matchup. Now, VCU has been on a hot streak. I am recording this before they face St. Louis on Tuesday night, so they might lose that game to St. Louis. I actually predict St. Louis to beat VCU at home, but nonetheless, I do think VCU is the best team in the A-10 conference, and that is a very good league that I think whoever comes out of the A-10 is going to stand a chance to pull off an upset in March Madness. And VCU has a really good team, some really good guards in Max Shulga and Joe Bamisile, but Memphis has some really good guards as well, PJ Haggerty, Tyrese Hunter, and Colby Rogers. So both teams really good guards. It's going to come down to the wire, I believe, this one, and I am going to pick the upset. I do like Memphis. I just hate the matchups that they have been getting in my recent March Madness predictions. And VCU, I think, would definitely be the strongest 12 seed. I think whoever comes out of the A-10 is going to be dangerous. Usually whoever comes out of the A-10 is really dangerous, and I think it is going to they are probably going to pull off an upset this year, whoever does come out of the A-10. Next up, we do have Wisconsin versus Middle Tennessee. I thought about picking Middle Tennessee here. I do like their team a lot this year, and I think if anybody wins Conference USA over Liberty, it is probably going to be Middle Tennessee. So I don't hate them in here out of the Conference USA, but I think that Wisconsin does survive here, but it is closer than whatever the spread is. But I am going to take Wisconsin. I think it is somewhat of a close game, though. Wisconsin survives. Next up, we do have Michigan versus either New Mexico or North Carolina. New Mexico versus North Carolina in the last 4 in game would be an amazing one. You got some stars on this team, on these teams: Donovan Dent, R.J. Davis, Seth Trimble. Ian Jackson has been playing amazing lately, especially scoring the ball. This one's tough, though. I just don't trust North Carolina. They've been barely scraping by or losing to a lot of teams. I'm going to go with New Mexico over them. And really, Michigan has not looked as good as they once did at earlier this season. Danny Wolf did not look good at all in that game the other night, Monday night, against Penn State. It was really Trey Donaldson who saved that one at the end. They almost lost at home to Penn State. That would have been a tough one. I don't trust them. I think this is the year New Mexico, if they can get in, gets a win in March Madness. So give me New Mexico, the Lobos, moving on to the second round. Next up, we got Texas A&M versus Cleveland State. Cleveland State's been looking a lot better lately, looking like maybe the favorite out of their league, so I do like that a lot. But I am going to go with Texas A&M. I think that they have some experience, especially with Wade Taylor, and they get past Cleveland State there in the round of 64. Next up, we do have Creighton versus St. Mary's. This would be an awesome matchup. Two, I believe, Christian Catholic schools, something going at it. Creighton has been playing a lot better lately, which is surprising because they did lose Pop Isaacs about a month or so ago, and I believe he is out for the season. But Ryan Cockburner, Stephen Ashworth have been really turning up lately, and I could see this Creighton team winning. I'm going to take St. Mary's, though. I think that St. Mary's, they've been playing really good lately. It's really surprising to me that they do have a lower seed than Gonzaga at this point, because I think St. Mary's should probably be a higher seed the way that they have been playing. I believe they're still undefeated in the West Coast Conference, so I'm going to take St. Mary's here in this one. Next up, Michigan State versus Jacksonville. I don't see Michigan State losing to a 16 seed under Tom Izzo. Give me Michigan State. This team plays very cohesive basketball as a team. You never know who's going to be the guy getting the buckets for Michigan State. They're pretty spread out as a team, and scoring wise, I love it. I think this is a really good Michigan State team, and they're undefeated in the Big Ten, so I am going to take Michigan State there. Let's head down to this Iowa State region here first. We're going to do it a little bit different. Usually I fill out a whole region, and I go region by region. Let's go whole first round, whole second round, like that for this predictions video. So we got Iowa State versus William and Mary in the first round. Give me Iowa State. You guys know how I feel about them. I think I've had them win the championship in my last 2 March Madness bracket predictions videos. I'm very high on Iowa State. Next up, we got Georgia versus UConn in the 8-9. Very strong 8-9 matchup. I think this one would come down to the wire, honestly. Asa Newell is an awesome center for Georgia, but I think the difference maker is going to be Liam McNeely. I think he is UConn's best player. Solo Ball has been playing pretty good as of late. I don't think UConn is that good of a team. I don't think they're going to come anywhere near the Final Four this year, but I do think that they can get past Georgia in a close one, and it's mostly going to be due to Liam McNeely. Next up, we do have Louisville versus Samford. Samford, I do think, is a threat because their offense is pretty good and has been the last few seasons, but I do trust Louisville. They have too many good guards between Chucky Hepburn, Terrence Edwards, you name it, that have been playing really good for them. Give me Louisville here as the 5 seed to move on. Next up, we got Mississippi State versus Northern Colorado. This is an upset that I did think about taking because I do really like this Northern Colorado team, but I do trust Chris Jans a lot in March Madness, which is why it is really kind of making me lean Mississippi State. And you guys know I'm a big fan of Josh Hubbard, even though he has had some periods of times this season where he hasn't been playing as good, but I still like Josh Hubbard. He showed up in March last year in the first round where they got it done. I think they do it again. Give me Mississippi State. Next up, we got Missouri versus Baylor. I am going to take Missouri. VJ Edgecombe for Baylor has been playing a lot better lately, and it is looking like they are definitely going to actually make the tournament. It was looking a little scary, like they might not. But I don't trust VJ Edgecombe to be consistent enough to be the guy heading into March Madness. We will see if he is consistent from this point until March Madness. If he does, I might change my mind, especially with the veteran point guard leadership of Jeremy Roach and the veteran center Norchad O'Meara. But I think Missouri, they're going to get this first round win if this is the matchup. I trust them here. Dennis Gates has done an excellent job putting this team together. You got Caleb Grill, who can light it on fire from behind the arc. Some good veteran players there on Missouri. Give me the Tigers to move on. Next up, we got Purdue versus Akron. I would love to see an Akron upset here. You guys know that they do have some former West Virginia players on their team that I really like Seth Wilson, James Okonkwo, and Josiah Harris. And they have a pretty good squad. They might win the MAC conference. And sometimes whoever comes out of the MAC is usually dangerous to pull off a big-time upset in the first round. But I do like this Purdue team. They have been looking really good lately, impressing me. Braden Smith is one of the better facilitating point guards in the country. Give me Purdue. And they got Trey Kaufman-Wren down low, which does help as well. Next up, we got UCLA versus Pitt. And these are two teams that I really don't like. I don't really want to pick in the first round. These two teams have been very inconsistent. And just right whenever you think you're going to write them off, they come back with a big win. And out of these two teams, I think I am going to go with the Pitt Panthers. I think Pitt, even though they went on a long stretch, I think like a 4 or 5 game losing streak, honestly, I think that they do have the team to get a win over UCLA in March Madness. Their UCLA's defense might be a problem for Pitt, but Pitt has a lot of players who can get their own bucket, like Jalen Love and Ishmael Leggett, who I think can get their own bucket. And if they can spread out the defense, I think they will be able to do that against UCLA and score enough to get the victory. Next up, we got Tennessee versus Central Connecticut. Central Connecticut is an interesting team. I remember early on in the season they beat St. Joseph's. That was a really impressive win in my opinion. However, Tennessee has played really good against lesser competition this year. There was a moment, the only time I can think about Tennessee struggling a little bit against a lesser opponent, at least a mid-major, would be against Middle Tennessee. They were losing at halftime, and that was at home for the Vols. Was able to come back and win. So it is possible Tennessee to get upset in the first round. I don't really trust Tennessee a ton in March Madness, but I am going to pick them to get by Central Connecticut here. Next up, we do have, let's go up to this region here with Duke. We have Duke versus Arkansas Little Rock, and it would be great to see Little Rock in the tournament again. I believe the last time they were in the tournament was when Chris Beard was their head coach, and they were able to pull off an upset. I believe that went to double or triple overtime. And they were making some crazy shots to get that upset, but it would be awesome to see them back in the tournament. However, Duke is one of the best defenses in the country. I think Duke gets it done, does not get upset by a 16 seed. Next up, we got Vandy versus Central Florida. Central Florida and Vandy, this would be a down-to-the-wire type of 8-9 matchup, I believe. And most 8-9 matchups usually are pretty close. I would expect no different from this one. I mean, Vandy, what they have been able to do under Mark Byington in his first year as a head coach there has been awesome. A.J. Hoggard transferred over there from Michigan State. He's been playing pretty good for him. But I think Central Florida has a lot of really good guards. Vandy's got big wins this year, though. I'm gonna take Central Florida. I would like to see UCF get a win in March Madness this year, and yeah, let's take them over Vandy. Either way, Vandy or UCF, to see one of them get a win in March Madness would be awesome for those basketball programs. Next up, we got Illinois versus Bradley, 5 versus 12, and you guys know that I do like Bradley a lot out of the Missouri Valley. Whoever comes out of that conference, whether it is Bradley or Drake, even if it's like Northern Iowa or Belmont, they have potential for an upset this year. And I do really like Bradley a ton. And I do like Illinois. However, Kasparis Jakaitis, it does turn the ball over quite a bit and is a freshman that can make some mistakes. Now, you do have other guards like a Kai Boswell, who is more of a veteran presence there. but I don't know if I trust this Illinois team completely just yet. I'm going to go with Bradley to pull off my second 12/5 upset of the first round. Next up, we got Kentucky versus Arkansas State. Arkansas State, I'm not completely convinced they are going to win the Sun Belt. I know, as you know, I do watch a little bit too much Marshall basketball than I want to, because I do cheer for them. I know in the Sun Belt the last few years, the favorite out of that league hardly ever does come out of the Sun Belt when you do get to the conference tournament. So I think Arkansas State got a lot of hype from their win over Memphis. It was a big upset. I just don't know if they are going to make it out of their league. They are one of the favorites. I just don't see them beating Kentucky, even if they do come out of that league. Kentucky is a really good offensive team that I think are just too athletic and too good for Arkansas State and are going to put up a bunch of points. Next up, we got Utah State versus either Wake Forest or Texas in our 11 seed, last four in game. Wake Forest and Texas would be a really good game. Hunter Salas on Wake Forest and then Trey Johnson on Texas would be amazing to see. I'm gonna take Wake Forest and Hunter Salas here to get maybe a buzzer beater late win over Texas here in this one, but I am gonna take Utah State over Wake Forest. I think Utah State has been playing a lot better ever since they got upset. Was that by UNLV a couple of weeks ago? They have been dominating their opponents, and they dominated Nevada, which was really impressive to me. Give me the Aggies to move on to the next round. Next up, we got Kansas versus Utah Valley, and Utah Valley to come out of the WAC would be awesome to see, and it's looking like they might be the favorites, even over Grand Canyon, which Grand Canyon was expected to roll through that league with Tyon Grant Foster and company and get at least a 12 seed, maybe even an at-large at an 11. So to see Utah Valley maybe as the favorites now is very interesting, and I'm not too high on Kansas. Hunter Dickinson hasn't been playing that great. Zeke Mayo, I think, is Kansas' best player for sure. And if they do survive this upset, it will be because of Zeke Mayo. Their transfers that they brought in, and Rylan Griffin and AJ Storr, just have been very disappointing and underwhelming. And we'll see, is Zeke Mayo, DeJuan Harris' playmaking, and Hunter Dickinson going to be enough? KJ Adams seems to have gotten worse somehow. So I am going to take Utah Valley. I really do like Kansas to be upset in the first round this year. I've been huge on that, and I'm going to stick with it. And unless Kansas proves me otherwise, I'm going to go with it probably all the way to March Madness this year. Kansas might lose in the first round, even as a 3 seed. This is the biggest upset of the video, at least so far. Maybe for the whole first round, but we'll see. 14 seed over a 3. Utah Valley defeats Kansas. Next up, we got Arizona as our 7 seed versus Maryland as our 10 seed. I think this would be a really good game. Maryland does have a pretty good front court, but I think Arizona has the personnel to defend it. I mean, it's going to be hard to defend a guy like Derek Queen, but I think Arizona can do it. They're going to need big games. They're going to need which Caleb Love is going to show up for this tournament is going to mean a lot for Arizona. That is the X factor. It's usually not, if you want to call Caleb Love their best player, it's usually not your best player that is your X factor. You can usually depend on them, but Caleb Love is the definition of an X factor. Are you going to get the Caleb Love that hit a half-court buzzer beater against Iowa State last night to force it to overtime and get the win? Or are you going to get the Caleb Love that is forcing up a ton of shots and shooting 2 of 13 from the three-point line? That is going to be the main X factor for Arizona's tournament success this season. But I am going to take Arizona over Maryland here in the 7 versus 10 matchup. Next up, we do have Florida versus Norfolk State. And I am going to take Florida here in this one. I do think that they get past the first round over the 15 seed. Now our last region of the first round, we have Alabama as our top seed in this region, and they will be going up against Bryant, and I think Bama gets it done in that one. Next up, we got West Virginia as our 8 seed versus St. John's as our 9 seed. I think this will be an excellent 8-9 matchup, but the way WVU has been playing lately, I'm hoping that they can get back to the way that they have been performing. They play Houston on Wednesday night. That is going to be a big game at home. We'll see if they can be competitive in that and possibly pull off another top 10 upset, as West Virginia has been doing that this year. But the last few games have been rough for West Virginia. However, St. John's has been playing great. I actually think a 9 seed, they would be a little bit underseeded here in this one. And I like St. John's in this one. I like the guards that they have. And until West Virginia can get back to the way that they have been playing, a couple weeks ago, and whether we find out Tucker DeVries is coming back or not, right now I'm going to assume that he is not going to play at all the rest of the season. I'm going to go with St. John's to defeat West Virginia. Next up, we do have Clemson versus McNeese, and I'm not too high on McNeese. I know that they have been rolling through the Southland Conference, but that's not really saying much. I mean, what's their hardest competition? Probably Texas A&M Corpus Christi's. I'm not buying McNeese's hype. They fooled us all last year. They got destroyed in the first round, and they've been playing worse this year. I'm not buying into it this year. Give me Clemson to move on, and Chase Hunter, who has hit some big shots for Clemson in some key moments. Experienced team. Ian Shefflin, they've been to the Elite Eight last year. Next up, we got Oregon as our 4 seed versus Yale as our 13 seed. And I'm going to pick another pretty big upset, 13 over 4, and go with the Yale Bulldogs to defeat Oregon. The Ivy League is another one of those conferences that are always dangerous in March. Yale is returning John Polonowski, who was huge for them last year in their March upset. Give me Yale to get it done this year over Oregon, 13 over 4. Next up, we got Ole Miss versus UC Irvine. I do really like this UC Irvine team. I do not like the matchup against Ole Miss, though. I am going to go with Ole Miss. Given the better matchup, I can see a path in this region for a UC Irvine type of run, assuming they can get past, Houston as the 3 seed and Ole Miss as the 6 seed. If they could get past those first 2 rounds, there is a path for UC Irvine to make a special type of Final Four run, in my opinion. But I don't like the matchup with Ole Miss, and I definitely don't like it against Houston in the second round. I'm hoping UC Irvine gets a better 11 draw than that. If they got an 11 draw in this region over here with Tennessee, Pitt, UCLA, Purdue, Baylor, I honestly think if they got this 11 seed where Baylor is, if they could get by Missouri, I see a path for them. I see a path for them at least to the Elite Eight. But here, I like Ole Miss over UC Irvine. Next up, we do have Houston over UNC Asheville. And I do think there is some potential for UNC Asheville. I think I had them upsetting, I want to say Kansas in my last predictions video. But Houston is playing phenomenal lately. One of the better defenses in the country. Give me the Cougars. Miles Uzon has been playing a lot better lately. Emmanuel Sharp, when he's hot, Houston is definitely going to be hard to beat. Next up, we do have Oklahoma versus San Diego State. 2 teams that I think have some potential in March Madness for sure. I think this would be a pretty close game. I'm going to go with San Diego State to win in this one, though. I think I trust them more. Right now, Oklahoma's a little bit hard to trust. Ever since they got into SEC play and have been playing hard competition night in and night out, they've not been looking too great. I'm going to go with San Diego State, the 10 seed, to defeat the 7. And then we got Marquette versus Merrimack, where I will go with Marquette and this Cam Jones team to get it done. So there is the round of 64 done. We have our final 32 teams. Let's start back up into the top left where we have Auburn versus Texas Tech in the first round. or in the second round, and I am going to go with Auburn. I do think Texas Tech could give Auburn a little bit of a run for their money in that one. Like I said, I think they are going to get a higher seed than an 8 seed when it is all said and done. But this Auburn team is too good. Johni Broome is back. He's going to have plenty of time to get back 100% before March Madness. And they also have some guards that have been playing really good. Denver Jones, Chad Baker-Mazara, Tahad Pettifor. They all play a special role on this team as guards. Miles Kelly, who's an awesome shooter. If he is hot, they are really going to be tough to beat in March Madness. Give me Auburn to the Sweet 16. Next up, we got VCU versus Wisconsin. That is going to be one of my favorite matchups to watch maybe of this entire tournament. Is really going to be the matchup between Max Shulga and John Tunji. That would be phenomenal. I'm going to take VCU. Give me a 12 seed in the Sweet 16 here to get us started with a good upset run. Next up, we got New Mexico versus Texas A&M. Another one I could really see New Mexico pull that one off. Donovan Dent might be the best player on the court in that one. I would say he probably is. Wade Taylor is a good player, has a lot of experience. I will go with Texas A&M to survive, but I could definitely see New Mexico pulling that one off and moving on to the Sweet 16. Then we got St. Mary's versus Michigan State. St. Mary's could hang in there. They play, a good defensive game. They're going to try to limit their turnovers, run the shot clock down, get the best shot possible each possession. That is how they play. But I think Izzo will be ready for it. Give me Michigan State to move on to the Sweet 16 here. And let's go ahead and fill out this region. We're close. Let's go ahead and fill out the rest of the region. So we got Auburn versus VCU. This is where VCU's Sweet 16 run is going to come to an end. They don't make it to the Elite Eight. They can't knock off the top overall seed. So we will go with VCU in that one. Joba Missile, or we're going with Auburn. Sorry, I meant to say we're going with Auburn. Like I said, VCU's run is going to come to an end here. Max Shulga shows out, has a phenomenal few games, and Joba Missile as well. Some good players that I think are built for March Madness that I would like to see make a run. And if they can get a better draw, I wouldn't put them past it to beat a 1 seed, but not this 1 seed. Auburn is too strong. Texas A&M versus Michigan State. This will be a really good 3 versus 2 matchup. I'm going to go with Michigan State, though. I really do. I am starting to love this team. The more and more that I watch them, the higher I'm getting on Sparty. They have a good cohesive team, like I mentioned before. Cohen Carr is an excellent player. He's definitely going to have some of the best dunks of this March Madness tournament. You got Jeremy Fears. You got Jaden Adkins. You got Frankie Fielder. So many good guards on this team. I think Tom Izzo's got a squad that can get him back to the Elite Eight. I'm going to take him here. And then we have Auburn versus Michigan State. Some good guards on either side. I think the difference in this one is going to be Johni Broome. And I am going to take the Auburn Tigers here to make it to the Final Four. First Final Four since 2019. Don't want to remind Auburn fans about that one. The late foul on Kyle Guy. That's all I'm going to say. Was it a foul? Let me know down below in the comments if you made it this far in the video. Next up, we got Iowa State versus UConn. 1 versus 9 seed. Who would have thought UConn would be a 9 seed? I knew we probably knew they were going to take a step down. Lost a lot of players. They were still preseason like top 10 though. But now as a 9 seed, we'll see if they can do some damage. I don't think they have the team for it, especially not against Iowa State. Iowa State, too good. Some really good guards. Curtis Jones. If Curtis Jones is hot in the tournament, I have a hard time believing Iowa State doesn't make it to the Final Four. But then we got Louisville versus Mississippi State. And I'm going to go with Louisville here in this one. I think Louisville might have the more well-rounded team than Mississippi State, to be honest. Both these teams could put up a lot of points. I think this is going to be a high offensive game, definitely at least in the 80s. Possibly the 90s, but it depends on how they start. But I like the veteran leadership of this Louisville team, the shooting, the offense. They've been playing really good. Give me Louisville to Sweet 16. Then we got Missouri versus Purdue. And I am going to take the Purdue Boilermakers here to get past Missouri. I think Braden Smith, he's been playing phenomenal. It's been kind of going under the radar, but Purdue has been playing awesome basketball lately, so I am going to take the Boilermakers to get it done here. Although I am not a fan of Fletcher Lawyer, I think he could choke and sell them a game. If they do lose early on, it might be because of him. But down low, Trey Kaufman-Wren, he's pretty consistent down there. He has a good post bag. Purdue's always had some good big men, and they got another one coming. If he hadn't got injured, that 7'2" dude who they had on Purdue, if he didn't get injured, this Purdue team would be dangerous to get maybe back to the Final Four. Next up, Pitt versus Tennessee. This is interesting because although I hate Pitt and they haven't been that hot of a team, which is the reason I am going to go against Tennessee, but Pitt does kind of have a team that can compete with Tennessee, and it would come down to, can Pitt rebound the ball and can they defend Tennessee, which I think they probably could. But I am going to take Tennessee to get it done and get to the Sweet 16. Then we got Iowa State versus Louisville. I did think about taking Louisville in this one, but I think Iowa State is on another level, and this is going to be a good first year under Pat Kelsey for Louisville in a building year, but this is not the year they get all the way to the Final Four, even the Elite Eight. But first year to the Sweet 16, you got to take that if you are a Louisville fan. Just to be back into relevance is really nice, I would assume. I feel the same way as a West Virginia fan after a couple of hard years. Next up, we have Purdue versus Tennessee. I am going to take Purdue, a 3 over a 2 seed. Tennessee does not get to their first ever Final Four, and they lose again in the Sweet 16 with a really good team of Chaz Lanier, Zakai Ziegler, who's a senior point guard, been playmaking, defending really well this year. They don't get it done. They make it to the Sweet 16 again and lose to Purdue, who is a really good Purdue team who gets back to the Elite Eight the year after making it to the championship game. And then in our Elite Eight matchup, we have our 1 and 3 seed, Iowa State versus Purdue. I am going to take Iowa State. I think Iowa State, even though they lost to Arizona, they really had that one. If it wasn't for a longer than half-court shot by Caleb Love to force overtime, they would have won that one in a tough environment against the hot Arizona team. I don't hold road losses like that where crazy stuff happened against the team too much. I still think Iowa State is one of the better teams in the country. Let's do this region because I have an interesting path and some interesting winners here in this region. So let's get to it. We got Alabama versus St. John's. Now I do think Alabama, I'm not going to lie to you guys, they can win the championship this year. And I might be in the minority in that on that one because I don't see many people saying Alabama can win it all. They might say they can make it back to the Final Four like they did last year. But I really do think with Mark Sears, Grant Nelson, Cliff Amorie, Chris Youngblood, they have a squad that could really get it done. But however, I am going to take St. John's. I had, one of my 1 seeds always has to lose kind of early at least at the Sweet 16. And I think right now Bama is the one that is maybe most vulnerable for that to happen. I don't know why I typed St. Mary's. I meant St. John's. But St. John's, led by Coach Rick Pitino, who's won 2 natties before. I know the 2013 one got vacated, but it happened. He won it with Louisville that year. And they have really good guards. Devion Smith, R.J. Lewis, and Kaderi Richmond, who are all key pieces to this team. They got Scott, who can stretch the floor as a power forward, and Zuby Ejiofor down low, who has taken a gigantic leap this year. I think St. John's has a squad that can make a little bit of a run, so give me the Johnnies to storm on in to the Sweet 16 past 1-seeded Alabama. Then we have Clemson versus Yale, and here we're going to have another upset, as I am going to take Yale to knock off Clemson. Clemson, who was in the Elite Eight last year, gets knocked off in the second round. And although they do have some experience, Yale was in the tournament last year as well and got a win. And John Polonowski is going to be one of the bigger stories of March Madness this year, as 13-seeded Yale marches on in to the Sweet 16. And then we got Ole Miss versus Houston. I think this one would be down to the wire. A really good matchup. But I am going to take Houston. I think that their team has been very impressive to me lately. Juwan Roberts has been kind of taken over as maybe the leading scorer of this Houston team, and really taken off. And combine that with what he's done defensively his whole career, and especially this year, that's going to be tough. And like I said, if Emmanuel Sharp and Milos Uzan are playing the way that they have been, Houston's going to be very, very tough to stop. Next up, San Diego State versus Marquette. I'm going to take Marquette to move on here to the Sweet 16. I think Cam Jones, Stevie Mitchell, some really good players there. Ben Gold down low, David Joplin at the 4. They have a good squad, and Chase Ross as well has really taken the next step this year. Been a really cool, nice role piece for this Marquette team. I think people are sleeping on Marquette a little bit. I think it is possible they could make it to the Final Four this year. I'm probably not going to predict it, but I can see the vision on that one for sure. But I am going to have them back in the Sweet 16. St. John's versus Yale. I kind of want to pick Yale again, but I'm not. They end here at the Sweet 16, and St. John's survives one of my Cinderellas here, and moves on to the Elite Eight as a 9 seed. And then we have Houston versus Marquette. I think Houston's defense is on another level, and I am going to take Houston to defeat Marquette here in this one. If they can slow down Cam Jones, you can't double him because he is an elite playmaker who will find the open guy, but they have guys who can guard him one-on-one and at least slow him down. Juwan Roberts is probably going to bully. I'm not going to lie. Him, Tolger, they got dudes. Francis, they can bully Ben Gold down low. And David Joplin is going to have a huge game for Marquette to defeat Houston, in my opinion. Then we got St. John's versus Houston in the Elite Eight to go to the Final Four. And I'm going to do it. I'm going to have St. John's as my big-time sleeper to make it all the way to the Final Four. I think that they have a path here, especially with facing Yale in the Sweet 16. They got some tough games against Bama and against Houston, but they get it done in this one. It's great bye, and we have a 9 seed in our Final Four. I just think that they are underseed as a 9 seed. I think that they should be at least a 7, to be honest. And they find the right matchups, they get it done. Final region, Duke, Arkansas, or no, we did that one already. Duke versus Central Florida. Reminds me of, what was that, 2019? When Duke faced Central Florida in the second round. It was Zion Williamson versus Taco Fall. And RJ Barrett hit a big shot to survive that one. Could we see that good of a game in the second round again for this Duke team? It really does give me those 2019 vibes, led by a star freshman, projected to go number 1 in the draft between Zion Williamson and Cooper Flagg. I am going to take Duke here to get it done and move on to the Sweet 16. Then we do have Bradley versus Kentucky. Although I do like this Bradley team, they have a very fun team to watch. I think Kentucky's too good offensively, and Kentucky moves on. Kobe Brea is a guy, a flamethrower shooter that I think is going to be very hard to stop early on in March, especially throughout the first weekend, which is why I think Kentucky gets to at least the Sweet 16, depending on matchups, though. Next up, we do have Utah State versus Utah Valley. This is one of my favorite storylines I have going on here. 2 Utah teams, not Utah and BYU, but Utah State and Utah Valley playing in the second round of the NCAA tournament. That would be awesome to watch. And I am going to have 14-seeded Utah Valley upset Utah State, our 6th seed, and Utah Valley beats Kansas and then beats Utah State to make it to the Sweet 16 Are they going to be the Cinderella of this season? I think if they can come out of the whack, they might have a chance to do it. Then we have Arizona versus Florida, where I am going to have another upset because I am going to take Arizona to knock off Florida to move on to the Elite Eight. This is an upset pick that I do really like, and I do think Florida has potential to go super far into the tournament this year, to the Elite Eight or the Final Four. I think that's probably their ceiling, is to make it to the Final Four, given the right matchups. But I do think that this Arizona-Florida matchup does make me lean a little bit towards Arizona, and it does depend on, again, which Caleb Love we get. I do think that Walter Clayton would be the best player on the court in this matchup, but if Caleb Love can play, with a little bit of consistency, doesn't shot chuck, I think the trio of him, Jaden Bradley, and KJ Lewis is going to be a little bit dangerous for, the trio of Walter Clayton, Elijah Martin, and Will Richard. I think that Arizona can compete with that matchup, and it can be a close game, and I actually really like that matchup there. So I am going to go with Arizona to upset our 2-seeded Florida, and our 7-seed makes it on to the Sweet 16. Next up, we have Duke versus Kentucky, battle of the Blue Bloods here in the Sweet 16. And this Duke team, I watched them the other night against NC State. Cooper Flagg was putting on a show, as he has been doing quite a bit this year, looking really good. They got him, Con Kneppel, they got Sion James. They have a pretty good squad. Tyrese Proctor played really good defense, a lot of length, a lot of size on that team. We've seen this matchup before where Kentucky did win. But I do like Duke in the rematch. I think that Duke's defense can slow down this team. If they can keep Kobe Brea from, shooting the lights out on them, and they can contain some of these high-scoring, great shooting guards on Kentucky, I really do think that Duke could beat them in a rematch. Give me the Duke Blue Devils to win that rematch of the Blue Bloods. I think it will be close, but I think Duke actually pulls away in that one in the end, and wins by 6-7 points. Utah Valley versus Arizona. Utah Valley getting to go up against another four-corner state here in Arizona. They just faced Utah State. Now they get Arizona, and I'm going to do it. This is my Cinderella of this video, is going to be the Utah Valley Wolverines. I really like the path that they have here. If they can knock off Kansas, which I think is probably the weakest 3 seed at this point, there's a path there against Utah State, against Arizona, who I really do like Arizona over Florida matchup-wise. I think that the Wolverines can get it done. And I've watched them. I watched the game that they beat Grand Canyon this year. They have a pretty good team, They have a point guard, his last name's Nelson, who's pretty good. I'm not going to sit here and act like I know everything about Utah Valley, but I do like the matchups and the storyline for them to be the potential Cinderella. Slipper still fits. They get by Arizona and make it all the way to the Elite Eight as a 14 seed. And then, their Cinderella run is going to end. I'm sorry, everybody in the world who is watching is going to be rooting for Utah Valley to make it to the Final Four over Duke, but it is not going to happen. So, we have a little bit of what I would consider a boring Final Four, but is going to lead to some really good matchups. A boring Final Four because I do have 3 1 seeds, which I don't typically do. I try to limit to at most 2 1 seeds in my Final Four. But I do think Auburn, Duke, and Iowa State are the clear top 3 teams in the country right now. Even though Iowa State did just lose to Arizona, I still believe they are a top 3 team in the country. And like I said, I try to limit myself to only 2 1 seeds in the Final Four. But this time I had to go with these 3 teams in it, and then we have a 9 seed with our 3 1 seeds. So a little bit of, fun Cinderella stuff going on. Utah Valley to the Elite Eight, St. John's 9 seed to the Final Four. We got, some upsets in there, even with the seeds. I try to make it interesting. But Auburn versus Iowa State, a rematch. Iowa State, this was in actually the first round of the Maui Invitational. It should have been the championship game because these two teams are awesome. But first round of the Maui tournament, Iowa State had a big lead. Auburn came back, won by a tip-in buzzer beater by Janai Broome. And does that happen again? I could see it happening. I could see Iowa State getting out in front and keeping the lead. Curtis Jones has been playing a lot better since then. He's really become one of the better players in the country. I actually think that the trio of Taman Lipsey, Keyshawn Gilbert, and Curtis Jones is a better guard trio than what Auburn does have as a collective. But where they're going to get hurt is Janai Broome and this front court. Is Deshaun Jackson, Josh Jefferson, are they going to be able to handle Janai Broome down low? I kind of feel like they would, but I am going to go with Auburn. Matchup reasons, I kind of want to go Iowa State, but I like to switch it up. I picked Iowa State to win the championship the last 2 times doing these predictions. I'm going to go back to old reliable of this season and go with the Auburn Tigers to get back to the national championship game because they can win this matchup. And I do think Bruce Pearl's got a really good squad and a good chance to do it this year. So give me the Tigers. Then we got Duke versus St. John's. Rick Pitino. No more Coach K, though. It would have been interesting to see a Coach K versus Rick Pitino Final Four matchup. Coaching battle in 2025. That would be pretty crazy. But I am going to take the Duke Blue Devils to get it done here. I will say St. John's does have the guards and the team that can match up with Duke. However, I could see guys like Kadira Richmond turning the ball over a little bit against this tough Duke defense. Got a lot of length there. They put a guy like Tyrese Proctor on him. Has he seen that type of length on him? So I think that Duke can get it done here. And for the first time in a while, we see one of these freshmen that is projected to go top number 1 in the NBA draft, huge prospect, playing out of his mind, go all the way to the championship. We haven't seen that in a while. And actually, the last player we've seen that went number 1 overall and won the national championship was Anthony Davis with the Kentucky Wildcats in 2012. So it has been 13 years since we have seen that happen. Will Cooper Flagg be able to change that? And who does Auburn have that can be put on Cooper Flagg to try to minimize his impact in this national championship game? My answer to you would probably be Denver Jones. I think Denver Jones is a very good defender who can slow down Cooper Flagg, has some experience as well. He's not going to stop him completely, but I think that he can do enough to slow him down. And really, without Cooper Flagg, if he is being slowed down with Auburn's offensive scheme, I'd say if they can get past Iowa State, Duke would be a little bit of an easier matchup for Auburn, in my opinion, because Bruce Pearl has an excellent offensive scheme to get Janai Broome some open shots, some lobs, get him some buckets, on the block there at the baseline. So some good pick and roll schemes with some added stuff in there. You love to see it. I'm going to take Auburn to win it all and beat Duke in the national championship. Bruce Pearl gets it done with this Tigers team. I think it can happen. This would be an awesome national championship matchup between Auburn and Duke. I would really like to see it. We've seen this matchup earlier in the season, and Duke did win. That was in Cameron Indoor Stadium, a home game for Duke. I think Auburn would win this one in a rematch. So give me the Tigers to win it all. So let me know what you guys think about this bracket down below in the comment section, guys. Who do you guys think would be your Final Four out of this bracket? This is CBS's bracket this time. I usually do Joe Lunardi's. We'll probably go back to Joe Lunardi's next time. I know Andy Katz actually does a bracketology every once in a while too. So next time he releases one, I kind of want to do one with his bracketology and fill it out. So, but yeah, guys, let me know who you would have in your Final Four based on this one. And subscribe if you guys haven't already. We do a ton of college basketball content here on the channel. And yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching.